Hello, Deck It Out Tier Tray of the Month friends. We are ready to get started on our November tray. So when you open up your box, you will have these pieces. This is going to be put on the back of one of your signs. This will slide in here, kind of like a kickstand, and it will hold one of your signs up. You get to choose, and I would put my tray together first before figuring that all out. These two pieces that I think look like witches' feet, they go into each other like so, and that makes a base. Okay, so you'll find those pieces right away. You'll also find these three straight edges. This is going to be used to build a Scrabble tile display holder. Okay, so we'll talk about how to build that. In one of the square bunches, I gave you tape. I wrapped your project in tape, and this is why. Because the tape is gonna help us paint, and these are your Scrabble tiles. So when you open it up carefully, because each letter is stacked on the tile that it belongs to. Now, if they drop and go all over your place like this, that's okay. Just know that they each have an outline that they match to, and you can open up your tape and put your letters on it. And I would even maybe do this right away, and because this is gonna help us paint. And I will show you throughout this tutorial all my tips and tricks and how we're gonna paint this together. So I would do this right away as you're unpacking. Put those to the side. In this little bundle of tape, you're going to have your leaves. This is for the garland that you can wrap around one of the tiered trays. One of your levels on your tray. So we do include the twine as well. You can see it over here. I would tape these down to stick these down to the tape as well. That will help us when we get started painting. And then you will have this saran wrapped piece. And you can open that up. And we went through and put everything on each project. So this you can throw away. So you'll have a pumpkin, a very pretty decorative pumpkin. This pumpkin fits together as a standing 3D pumpkin. Okay, I like to keep my pieces together. This one says leftovers are for quitters. This one says everyone gather together. And these are all cut out words, so that's why they have tape on them. This one says let our lives be filled of Thanksgiving. So we're gonna have that. Then there's this large pumpkin, and then thankful and grateful, blessed, and there's these little pieces that we'll end up gluing in as well. So go through your kit, have all of the project parts, and then you will have paint, 5 colors of paint, sponges, glue, a detail brush, should all be included. And when you are ready, let's get started. Okay, I'm gonna start with the Scrabble letters because I know where I'm going with those. I'm gonna paint the letters brown, and I'm gonna paint the tiles white. I just feel like it will pop. And then I will be painting this brown or maybe light brown. But I'm going to paint these dark brown. So you're gonna grab your sponge, dip it in your paint. So load the paint. Okay, that is way too much paint. Then we like to dab it off. Okay, so you have like next to none paint on there, or next to nothing. Thickness of tissue paper is what your paint should be. Okay, and then I'm just gonna take and I put my fingers on the tape, and then these were pushed down really well. All you have to do is dab it like that. And now I'm stuck to the tape. Push down your letters really good, and then you just dab. And I'm not using a lot of paint. You'll see I'm even picking up paint from the spot where I unloaded the paint or took off some of paint when I did my initial dot of paint from my cup. Okay, so you wanna paint this to your liking, of course, but I would say nice thin coats. You can always do multiple coats, but nice thin coats. And then these letters are cut on a laser, which means their edges are burnt. That means you don't have to paint them, which is awesome. Okay, they look nice and clean. So paint these to your liking, and then you'll want to set these aside. You'll grab your next project. Next, I'm gonna paint my gobble tiles. I'm gonna grab my white. That's a lot of white paint. So I'm gonna smear it off, dab it off. Okay, with these, I'm just gonna paint them, and I'm pulling the paint off the edge. Okay, so I don't get the paint on the edge of the tiles. This G is etched in there, so you know where to place your G. So feel free to cover that up, but leave it so that you know where to place your letter. I'll give you a little example of this. You can see that I'm really putting a lot of paint on because I want white tiles. And you might want to do 2 coats on this once it's dry. But you can see that the G is still there, but I've covered it up significantly. Okay, so continue this process with all of your tiles, regardless of what color you chose. I'm excited to see what colors you're picking. I'm gonna dive into painting my leaves. The same idea from before is using not a lot of paint. Okay, you're just gonna dab on the leaves. Now, the leaves have etched in or engraved lines, and so you don't wanna cover those up too much. Now, when I paint these, I don't know if I'm going to paint solid or not. I'm probably gonna add a little bit of orange and maybe a little brown to them. And maybe I'll do the leaves kind of different focuses. Let's see here. We'll add some orange. Now, if you want to do a little bit of different color on the leaf, I would tell you to load some paint on, okay, not a lot, and then brush it off, and then kind of just brush lightly to get the look you are hoping to achieve. Now remember, it is paint, so if you don't like it, let it dry. We can always paint over it, okay? So I think I'll just do it like that for this one. And then I'm gonna do the opposite on the other leaves. So not a lot of paint, just dab, and then I'll add some gold to these leaves. Okay, so I added brown and I added a little bit gold to those. Now I'm gonna set those aside because they're done being painted. I'm going to grab one of the projects that has cutout words on it as well. And you're gonna wanna take the tape off carefully. And this one especially has this tiny little piece, the and sign. Now you'll wanna take these off carefully, flip them over. Now if you happen to break them, you can always glue them on to your project correctly, right? You can always put them together and glue them. Okay, so this is the and side. So thanks and giving, let our lives be full of. Now, these letters right here, I'm gonna come back after I paint and I'm going to use the detail brush. You could use a marker. You could use your X-Acto knife. I might even use that to fill this in so it stands out more. Okay, so for this house, I'm gonna do the grayish teal color, and I'm gonna put paint on, and I'm just gonna pull out to the side. Now I'm doing that so I don't get paint dripping down my edges. Okay, remember the edges are burnt, so we don't have to paint them. You certainly can paint them if you want, but I'm just gonna kind of go over this, and I can still see all of the lines that are engraved, okay? And that's what you want. Now you might, again, depending on what color you selected to paint this and what your preference is for paint coverage, you might wanna let it dry and then do a second coat of paint. You always wanna have that paint dry before you put another coat of paint on. All right, let's move on to the next project. For this, it's a pumpkin stacked word. So, or words, I should say. So I have the tape here because you have the word together is missing, or it's separated with the ER. Gather is one word. Everyone is split into two sections. Okay, so put that on the tape. I'm gonna paint those letters white, and I'm going to paint the pumpkin, the teal, orange, and gold. So you can follow these lines, and that's what I'm gonna do, follow the score lines here. So paint, pull some paint off. This is the stem that you'll glue onto the top if you want it. Otherwise, you could just leave it as kind of like a subway sign. I'm just gonna take the paint, pull it across, keep it in my sections. This would be pretty ombre as well, because once you get paint on there, you can paint a coating so that you don't see those lines if you would like. All right, so for this three-dimensional multi-facing pumpkin, you're gonna wanna paint all sides completely because it sits together, and so you'll be able to see every side of it. And so I'm gonna paint this orange, and then I'm gonna come back with brown and rustic it up a little bit. And I think I'll paint up here brown and maybe a little bit of teal. But this is a fun time where you could create this pumpkin with polka dots. You could create it with the teal and gold. Lots of different options. I'm just gonna go with the orange and then bring in some browns after I get it all painted. So make sure you paint all sides. Okay, while side one is drying, I'm gonna bring in my beautiful detailed pumpkin. Now for this one, it's the same thing. Load your sponge, unload it, and then dab lightly because it's all lasered. So there's lots of detailed parts. You don't need a lot of paint, and you don't want the paint dripping on each of the details. Next up, I'm going to paint the large pumpkin. Okay, so you'll paint the backer completely, let it dry, paint this part, let it dry, and then we're gonna glue them together. So think about the color combos that you're hoping to achieve. Okay, let's take a look at this one. Now, carefully take off your tape. Again, always be careful. These pieces are very delicate. You'll paint these. Okay, stick them onto the tape. And then you'll paint this. Now, I got a little paint marker that I'm gonna use for this part. But again, like we talked about, you could use your X-Acto knife to be really fine in this place, or a toothpick, or maybe you have a Sharpie you could also use. I did have like this fine tip Sharpie that also worked as well. So lots of different options to get these small words put together. But you'll paint this, paint your letters, and then at the end we'll do the assembly video. Okay, for this one, just remember that you have these small pieces in here, so take everything off, paint the background, paint the overlay, put these on a piece of tape to paint these pieces, and then we'll come together to do the assembly. Okay, for this part, please just paint the pieces. Don't paint the edges because we're going to have to assemble it. This is your Scrabble tile holder. Now that you have everything painted, let's start assembling. Okay, Deck It Out DIYers, that's a wrap on your tray for the month of November. This Scrabble tile shelf is super cute, so just make sure you probably saw in the video, but I just did a bead of glue on the inside of the lines, and then I let it sit for a few minutes to set, and then your Scrabble tiles will fit in there really nicely. They'll stand really well. I took a little bit of the twine from the garland and I tied it on the top of this Everyone Gather Together sign. If I have extra, I might even tie it on the top of this piece as well. So there you are. There's all of the pieces. Now remember, you do have two stands. You have the plate holder stand type one and then the kickstand type. So this one gets glued on the back of a project. So let's say you're gonna put it on the house. You're gonna glue this part to the back of the house, and then you'll take the little kickstand and you'll put that in there, and then that will stand the house up, okay? Or whatever project you wanna put this kickstand part on. Now, if you want more pieces, always go back into your other tray sets, and if you did not paint them, or maybe you did, but the color scheme still goes with these pieces, then go for it. Bring those out so you have more places or more setups. And this is just a fun little detail that you can sprinkle anywhere on your tray. So remember to jump in the group, join us in there, and show us what you create. Thanks, Deck It Out DIYers. See you next time.